I was going to put together a piece, but I figured I would just rant about this. So Jake Paul lost to Tommy Fury, right, y'all? And Tommy Fury was in a reality show, much like Jake Paul was, but his skills are far better, though both men's defense is horrendously bad. So they took each other on in Saudi Arabia. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has clearly, for Vision 2030, said we are going to get into sports. We're going to buy our way into sports. We are going to use sports to push that this is a destination for Americans to go. And hopefully, from the public perspective of Americans, ease up a little bit on these brash feelings that Americans may or may not have about Saudi Arabia. And it has worked. 1,000% it has worked. They have gotten into boxing, clearly. They've gotten into horse racing. They've gotten into auto racing. They bought Newcastle United. I mean, the list goes on and on and on for what they're doing. Anyways, Jake Paul took on Tommy Fury. Here are my thoughts. Both men's defense is horrible. Jake did not have to take on Tommy Fury. This was an ego thing. He corrected himself after this, but in the post-match, the post-fight interview with Radio Raheem, he said, I was sick during camp and I had an injury during camp. Those are excuses, whether he wants to correct himself or not. The crowd started to boo. Get it. This is the ceiling for Tommy Fury, if I'm being very clear. Both of these men cannot win titles. Eddie Hearn even told Jake Paul this some time ago. And they featured it in Real Sports, which everyone should be watching if you're into sports, journalism, that documentary feel, phenomenal reporting. So they did this Real Sports, and Eddie Hearn even said, you will never be a world champion. Now, the only reason he was close to it is because they literally created something for Jake Paul because he was making them money. That was it. Yeah, you could beat up Ben Askren, who's a wrestler. You could beat up Tyron Woodley, who's not a boxer. You could beat up, Aneeson Gibb, a fellow YouTuber. You could beat up Nate Robinson. And yet when it comes to a guy who is not even at the top of his division in this sport, Jake Paul loses. Yeah, he landed a few good shots here and there. He put Tommy Fury on his ass one time. With a jab. That was surprising. That's because Tommy Fury is a fully offensive fighter who keeps his head in one position. He's not good defensively. I think they knew that, and if Jake Paul threw more, he probably could have won because Fury's head movement is awful. I love the ego of this. And Bomani Jones had a fun reaction on Twitter. You could go search for them, where after they had this sparring back and forth of Jake Paul basically saying, I don't know who the blank you are, and Bomani saying, dude, all I know about you is people don't like you. It was great. Bomani Jones went to Twitter afterwards. But regardless, this is a pure ego thing for Jake Paul. He wanted to take on Tommy Fury because they had been bickering and arguing back and forth. And he lost. One of those scores for Jake Paul where he was up by 4 or 5 on the scorecards out of an 8-round fight was atrocious. Awful. But that's boxing for you. So now where does Jake Paul go from here? I don't know. I truly believe and I buy into what Bomani said, that he's a hustler, clearly. This is his hustle. He is getting into micro betting as well. That's going to be the next hustle. He has his hand in a lot of different ventures. This was just one that was going to pay him $4 million. I think he got $7 or $10 million for this last fight. That's easy money for him, even though he did say, and I will give him credit for this, he said, I feel like I'm suffering brain injuries. Because you are. That's what boxing is. That's what fighting is. So where does he go from here? The Diaz fight was way more appealing than Tommy Fury. People don't even know who Tommy Fury is, yet Jake Paul thought people would because of the last name, which shows the reach of the Fury name and the Fury family name. I mean, I know who he is because I have seen Tyson Fury's come up ever since he had hair and was training at Kronk Gym. I don't think that there was the name appeal for this fight. And Jake Paul underestimated himself, in my opinion. The Diaz fight was more interesting, truly. And I know, Monday morning quarterbacking here, it would have been much more interesting for a lot of people if he fought another non-boxer but bigger name in another sport, because then you would have the crossover. Here you had the Tommy Fury supporters. Who are they? And I say that respectfully. Like, who are they? Where are they? Is it Tyson Fury, who was in the stands? Is it John Fury, his trainer? I don't know. But Jake is going to have some questions that need to be answered. Now, he will probably play up the, I got sick in camp, or, I just wasn't ready, or he'll continue to harken back on and bring up the knockdown to show that, he can strike his rematch clause in order to fight Tommy Fury. It's totally fine. He can do that. Will the interest be there for a rematch? No, I don't think so. So Bomani gets the last laugh. Jake Paul loses. And for what seems like the resounding feeling of this, everybody wins.